Peace, infinite waters diving deep once again. We are here with the amazing Teal Swan. Last time we chatted, it was in LA. Deep divers been wondering, gosh, where's Teal? Well, she's right here. So amazing for you just to dive with us again.
Thanks for having me. This is pretty exciting times on the planet slash terrifying times. So
Yeah, how do you find with the recent election and everything? How's it been there for you?
terrible. It's been absolutely terrible. The United States is gearing up towards a civil war. And I think the universe knows that when America is in a state of unrest, the entire world is unsafe. So basically, and it's not just the USA, like we're watching the government system stacking and tiering that is very terrifying. It's a domino effect type of situation that we've got going on. And I think that most people who are at least a tiny bit tapped into the collective unconscious and the collective conscious both are, let's say, aware of the conflict that is brewing. And so it's been really super intense. I feel like for this whole last year, most of us, because this has been the year of purification, we've been essentially stripped of all of these barriers to increasing our frequency. And it's been like a really quick upgrade. But the kind of upgrade for most of us where you can hardly keep up with it. So most of us have been sort of hanging on for dear life. And that has been what it has felt like.
Well, a lot of people, deep divers, a lot of people are afraid, and a lot of people are actually saying it's a good thing because it's actually highlighting it's a symptom, humanity symptoms. That's what I've been hearing. What do you feel about that? That's actually good that everything is crumbling apart so everything can be rebuilt again.
Well, what I think is that right now, it's not like these things that we're watching right now in the world didn't exist and suddenly do exist. They were basically suppressed aspects of the human subconscious, like the collective subconscious of humanity. And now that is sort of like the veil is being lifted, so they're becoming a part of our consciousness. Oh my God, racism still seriously exists. Oh my gosh, like the pharmaceutical companies are literally trying to destroy human lives because they're profiting by it. These types of things which are a part of us but that we don't admit to, we can no longer not admit to them because they're coming up and becoming so obvious. So what I love is that the pretense is ending, but there are pluses and minuses to this, obviously. And I feel like the people who see this as a good thing are not wrong, but it's that they're taking a long-term vision of the planet Earth rather than a short-term vision of the planet Earth. And so I feel like there's almost got to be a balance to be had between seeing that long-term outcome of all of this type of conflict is going to be really beneficial, but also not using that as a way to bypass what's actually going to occur in the short term. And what somebody like myself knows is how the human shadow comes out in people. I know that firsthand, and I know it's not pretty. And so I feel like a lot of the people who've got that attitude right now of kind of like, oh, it's wonderful, it's breaking apart so something new can be built in this place, is true from a universal perspective. But when you're standing in front of somebody who's bleeding in the streets, it is not as easy to say this is a good thing. So I feel like we're almost in this time of real tenderness where we have to balance the extremes. That the short term is going to be not great, honestly, for the sake of everyone collectively awakening. I've been talking a lot about the fact that the human race is no different than a singular consciousness. What do we know about people?
Right.
Usually they find awakening through getting cancer or through losing someone they love or through, driving their car off a cliff. And so we know that suffering is often the route that human consciousness chooses to awaken. So you can imagine that if right now the universe is wanting the entire human race to awaken, what we're collectively a match to.
Right. I feel there is so much humanity shadow is right now being witnessed by everyone.
Yep.
And I feel it has to start on an individual level. Really, one shouldn't be in fear, but one has to really realize that what are you focusing on? Because we ask for leaders, so that's what we get. I remember reading Krishnamurti years ago who said, have you ever wondered why we have leaders? So I feel that's one of the best steps anyone can take is start looking for the leadership within yourself, which is going to be a long, long, long process. But I feel that's because I saw in 2012 the guru figure was kind of fading away. Nobody, like, I share videos, people don't see me as a guru. They're like, oh, he goes through a lot of stuff as well. So it makes it more relatable. And I feel now people are looking more within themselves to realize not even our leaders can save me. So I feel that could be a benefit, if any, to say, gosh, look, who's going to help me right now? So it's almost made people realize the seriousness of the situation. Whereas before they were more kind of asleep and comfortable. Now everyone is like searching for answers.
Yeah, I've been feeling that. Like, definitely a lot more seeking than usual, which I enjoy that aspect of it for sure. But man,
Right. And how do you feel with everything? I don't really talk about this stuff a lot as well. Do you feel it helps talking about it?
I
Or do you feel it's better to focus on something totally different and act like you don't know what's going on?
I feel like we crossed a threshold. So basically, what I was feeling like is that 2011, 2012, 2013, we were kind of on a precipice where it was like, is the human race going to choose in favor of awakening without having to line up with something that causes awakening, if you catch my drift? And the human race decided essentially that it needed a wake up. So you can consider this whole conflict like that type of a thing. So back when we were kind of teeter-tottering on that precipice, I decided that we should teach people from my, if somebody like me or you should teach people to focus entirely on what makes them feel good, entirely on what they want to create, and have no focus and no awareness on that. But we have now passed a threshold. And the way to understand this is to understand momentum. So when you're thinking thoughts, continually focusing on something, it causes a momentum of manifestation. And even if you shift your frequency, you've still got the momentum of that previous frequency going. So right now what I have seen is that we have already manifested the kind of thing which most of us wanted to avoid. It's done. It's already vibrationally pre-paved. There's nothing you're going to do to stop the momentum. So it's kind of like at a certain point a person dies. You can't undo the death because there's momentum that created it. So I'm sort of, let's say, coming out of the closet more recently about all of this, and I've decided that talking is necessary. Most especially because if the human race is a match to this, which they are completely, then I don't think it's very loving for them to not be prepared. So it's not about explaining a doom scenario and how you can't get out of things and how you're misery. It's about, this is the reality and this is what we can do about it. And I feel like people really need that. It's kind of like that dual focus. Both focus on what I want to create as a result of the collapse, but also we can't be in a state of denial about what we have lined up with right now. And I'm actually not liking it very much in the spiritual community when I'm seeing a bunch of people who are like, just sit down and hold hands and do love and light. And it's like, that's not going to work at this point in time. Like, there's actual action that does need to be taken at this point. So, yeah, it's pretty,
Right.
it's like you're seeing a division even in the spiritual field between the people who are on, the side that I am obviously on, which is like, no, we're done. We're past that point. It's time basically to be focusing on what is actually occurring in the world and what we're going to do about it. And other people, other spiritual teachers who are like, no, just put the blinders on you, create your own reality, focus on something good, as if it doesn't happen or isn't happening.
Right, right. What do you feel led humanity up to this point? Because from 2012, it did seem there was a kind of awakening happening. People were looking for change. They were ready for it. And I remember 2012 just even seeing YouTube content, like so many documentaries, and it's almost things go back and forth, snakes and ladders. But what do you think is one of the main things that led humanity to the point where we are right now?
Inaction. That's going to sound super funny, probably, but I honestly feel like what happened is that everyone was waking up and going, oh, that's a great idea, and they didn't do anything about it. So what I'm watching is, it's one thing to watch an inspirational film and say, "Oh, it feels so amazing." The idea of not being dependent on the system is amazing. The idea of using alternatives to money is amazing. The idea of intentional community is amazing. The idea of awakening is amazing. So is the idea of meditation. But then I did not see the follow through. And so it's almost like people are wanting all kinds of things but not letting themselves go with the expansion. And so it can be likened to a rat cage. Every time I talk about this, what's coming in the world, I talk about it in terms of the rat cage. The rat cage is whatever it is that is preventing you from what you want. So if I say, I don't want this job, I want a job that feels good, what is preventing you from that? That whatever it is that's preventing you, whether it's a thought or something you're doing or belief, that's the rat cage. That is the rat cage in your life. So what I've noticed is people have not gotten out of that rat cage, and so it's almost like the universe is coming in. And from a higher perspective, that's pretty loving, but from a lower perspective, we know what this shattering of the cage might look like. But it's like the universe is coming in and saying, okay, so you wanted all these things, but you didn't go with the expansion. So let's help you by dismantling your rat cage. But we know that, obviously the reason that you don't move beyond the rat cage is because of the level of attachments you have. We're attached to the thoughts. We're attached to the idea we have to go to a job every day. We're attached to all these things. So obviously separating from those things that we're identified with, we either do it by choice or else the universe sort of has a way of ripping it away from us and being like, now you get to deal with what it's like to lose those things.
Right, right. But you said the action, but maybe it's the inaction that might be the solution, because the action is the repetitive routine. This is the cycle. It's hard to break. We love to go to work because it's a program. So the action actually has become our demise because we're on autopilot right now. You see, and sometimes if everyone wants to stop, like I quit my job in 2011, I said, okay, I just want to write, I just want to make videos, and that inaction set me free. But we're addicted to action on the planet where we don't question what we're doing. And every day you see a plane above you. Life isn't stopping. Everyone is involved in an action which they're solidifying through their beliefs. Mm-hmm. And every day it's getting stronger. So that action is something which is probably part of the problem.
Yeah.
We have to push down the brakes and stop everything completely.
Yeah, I kind of wish I could take everyone on the planet into like a huge fasting retreat where they actually found themselves. But yeah. I feel like there's a huge difference between people who watch something and let it change who they are, and people who watch something as entertainment. And I feel like, as a spiritual teacher, I honestly feel like for a whole lot of people, spiritual information is entertainment more so than it is something that we commit to. So, I feel like there's a difference between saying it's great to meditate and actually meditating. And I feel like what I was watching in 2012, 2013 that I feel like led up to this is that you've got a bunch of people who say, oh my gosh, I watched all this stuff about how horrible slaughterhouses are. I just can't believe it's like that. 2 seconds later, they're walking into Wendy's and they're like, I'd like a chicken mixed salad. Like that. So it's just, there's a gap, basically, of understanding here between application and information. And so it's like the universe is going to make it bigger. That's what we know about the law of attraction, right? We're going to mirror you one time small, then you don't get it, we'll mirror it bigger. Then you don't get it, we'll mirror it bigger. So it feels like we've got this kind of ramping up process happening within the mirroring aspect of the universe.
Right. I feel on so many levels, it really starts on a very simple level as even nutrition. I feel that a lot of people, that's why I always say 7-day vegan challenge, because I know for a fact, I went to the Veg Fest in LA. Once you start changing your diet, it starts there. Yep. And food, a lot of the times, is great because it can link into vanity, which so many people love these days, that they want to look great. And if you fuse that, people start eating better and start thinking better automatically. I think a lot of the times people forget that the information, if it's too heavy and someone is eating a sugary donut, it doesn't make sense for them. You see, because I know a lot of people, as soon as they changed their diet, they started getting
Yep.
downloads majorly. And these were people who never even read a book before, but they just started to feel a bit more deeply. And I feel a lot of the times people don't really talk enough about food and animals and the connection between what we're doing to animals, over 64 billion animals killed every single year, to what's happening right now. And I feel that's the massive missing link. And I feel that's a secret.
Well,
If people,
yeah. You don't even get me started on this one. Oh my god. Yeah.
because no one wants to seem like they're nagging. That's another thing. You know, a lot of people who are eating a plant-based diet, but I always say it's needed
It's needed. I agree.
because that's something which people can connect to. Everyone loves their dog, they love, and that's something which you can really wake people up on. I don't feel that area has been tapped in enough
I don't as well.
because everyone wants to go on the super deep level, but then people will listen to it, but then they go home and then they go to Wendy's, you
Mm-hmm.
see. So it really starts what you're putting on your plate. That's where the greatest revolution takes place, in my mind. And then everything else just follows naturally. Because what's happened is that a lot of people right now, they're not looking for a lot of information. They're not looking for the heavy information. They're looking for something very simple. That's why Trump won, because he's someone who connects on the emotional level to people who are in that same vibrational field. He's just straight up and honest how he feels. So that's where humanity is moving towards. They don't even care if it's right or not. They just want something that moves them,
Yep.
makes them feel whatever emotion. If it's anger, that's good. If it's sadness, that's good. But people don't want lukewarm, and I feel that's what a lot of the spiritual community has become.
Yep.
It's become lukewarm, where a lot of people they're afraid to talk about anything because everything is so politically correct. You're going to offend someone. If you have an opinion these days, you'll be crucified. So a lot of people in the spiritual community don't really want to talk about what's going on because they know if they do, it's going to open up a can of worms for them.
And it will.
you know, they're going to have a lot of people who aren't going to really like what they have to say, and a lot of people who are going to love it. But a lot of people just want the clean slate to be seen
Yeah.
in a certain way.
You good dog. Yeah. Okay. So this is a hot button for me because
Right.
I just don't agree with it, and this is where you start to see my personality type ceases to be like a spiritual teacher and becomes a little bit more of a revolutionary. I feel like there's a certain point at which we have a duty to speak up, and I feel like I mean, really, honestly, resisting something, constantly resisting something, fighting against something, right? That can become its own dysfunction because you feed whatever it is you're resisting. But what people don't understand is ignoring things, going into denial is every bit as resistant. So I feel like even to stay in alignment, some of us really have to get over these individual fears we have about becoming attacked or not seeming politically correct or not seeming the way we want to seem, and literally just stand up at this particular moment in time for what we really 100% believe in. And I feel like it is possible to do that in an in alignment way.
Right, right. Well, I congratulate you on all you've done because you've shared so much, and it's something which you don't have to do. And I look at Instagram and see what people post, and I'm like, there are people who don't even post anything to help anybody, and that's fine. They're living their life because anybody who chooses to do this is pretty mad. Anybody that wants to help someone is pretty mad because you don't have to do that, and there are no brownie points for it. You see, so it's always a choice. It's almost as if you can go out of your way to help people, but at the same time, it's something which you have to be courageous enough to do because you have to go home and think about what you've just said. That's why so many people avoid it because they don't want to have to think about what they want to say it and then go home. I was talking to someone saying that even on YouTube, a lot of big YouTubers, the bigger you get, the quieter your voice becomes. When really this is a great way to share opinions, but obviously you've got more to lose as your audience is growing. You're like, there's a lot of people if you say this, if you say that. And I feel that's why you have to really get into your core beliefs, like you've done from the beginning, and then it's a lot easier.
It is. So what are you
You
telling your
s-
people to do? I mean, like, what are you feeling?
well, I made a video on Trump. It went viral in the first day. As soon as it happened, I said I've got to share a video on this, not just about Trump, but just about how the whole world is changing. And I said that humanity is looking for a savior. That's our fundamental problem. And all of us are. We all need heroes. But what's happened is we've become lazy. We've moved into an arrested state of development. And now what's happened is that everyone was messaging me when it happened. I got like 1,000 messages,
Yep.
because people were worried, they were scared. But, I always tell people that there's nothing to be afraid of because the worst has already happened. Nothing worse, more worse is going to happen than this. But what you have to really ask yourself is how you're going to spend the rest of your life on planet Earth. That's a secret. I mean, we can go and start, uh, you know, crying over what's happened, or we can actually elevate because there are so many people who get down when these things happen. But what happens is that it's tied into our emotions. We give these people power because of our need for them to govern us. So when you don't even see these people as leaders or anything like that, you really just see it more as a comedy show. Obviously, their policies affect us because the majority of people believe in these people, so it affects us. But the ones who are awake, which a lot of your audience are, a lot of mine are, we're starting to realize that we have to move completely out of the system
Yeah.
and create a whole new one
Yep.
because our problem has always been fusing with the system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of people get it wrong, you see. Obviously, we have to live in the world, we have to pay bills and stuff like this, but all of that is what feeds the system, you see. So a lot of people don't even realize that your daily activity is either helping this whole thing or not supporting it at all. Your whole life could be a protest just by your lifestyle, you see. And that way, that's where it starts. It all starts with the individual because what a lot of people as well, they say, okay, I need to do this and do that. And then they haven't even sorted out their diet. They haven't even really realized that all of these people who you see in power and all of these people, they work on a fixed vision every single day. They're not focusing on you at all. They don't care about you.
Yep.
you know, Yet you are focusing on them. That's why they are where they are, and that's why you are where you are.
Yes.
You see, because we spend all of this time, celebrities are called stars for a reason because stars govern everything in existence. So when something happens to a celebrity, it affects people on an emotional level because they're stars. They're literally stars. So they actually have real power. We've given them power. They govern how we feel. If your favorite star is feeling sad, you're like, oh my gosh, because most of us are connected to these people more than we're even connected to ourselves. And I feel the whole thing is changing the more people start to go within. And I feel what we have to all do is make that interesting enough because this is a movie. And whether you want to admit it or not, life is a show, you see. So what I'm doing is always taking from both worlds to say, okay, I get it. The whole world's a stage. So I incorporate theater in what I do as well. Because if you're taking this seriously, you're in big trouble. They don't take it seriously themselves. That's the whole joke. Like a lot of people in the spiritual community, they take things so seriously when really they have to learn what I call left hand, right hand, where you're on the righteous path, but also you've got to trick up your sleeve. Where that's what great artists do as well. They're fusing artwork. Artwork is where, oh my gosh, what? You always want to be unpredictable because spirituality, if it's predictable, it becomes stagnant.
So are you basically saying that from your perspective, you don't feel like this situation in the world should be taken seriously?
Oh, I definitely feel it should be. Definitely should be. But I'm saying the way people solve it, the solutions around it, have to come from also an artistic way. Because what we've seen is that if you're too straightforward, the message goes over people's heads. People get riled up, emotionally. People have to connect, to people's emotions rather than even their logic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I feel is so difficult for a lot of people to tap into, because when you are tapping into someone's emotions, you might have to incorporate music in there. You might have to incorporate, you're incorporating so many different elements. It's not just the standard one piece you're doing. It's like now like a theater show. And then you're reaching people on deeper levels, because once you do that, then you can almost that's what I'm always doing. I'm always experimenting,
So I got a
you see,
question.
and I yeah.
So what are you doing differently, given what's going on in the world today?
Well, for me, I'm always talking about stuff that's going on, and I'm proud of that. I'm never backing down from it. I'm always highlighting what's going on, but I'm always showing a presence. I feel the presence is so important. Every single day we wake up, and a lot of people have a lot of time on their hands. You need to be a presence in the world, because if you're not, then people are going to focus on somewhere else, which that's where their attention is going to go. That's the major problem. A lot of people share even on Instagram, they share on Facebook, but you never see their face on YouTube, because that's a lot harder to do. I mean, who wants to record a video in the middle of the afternoon when you could go to the park? Nobody wants to do that. Like, not
You
day
do.
after day.
Only you.
Only me, because once again, I'm a wizard. I create out of thin air, and I made it a very simple formula. I don't edit videos, it's one take. Whatever comes out, comes out. So for me, 10 minutes is 10 minutes. People spend 10 minutes just getting down the stairs. So it's really a walk in the park. You see, but that's another thing where you have to let go of perfectionism. I feel that's the only way. That's what I did. And I realized that secret. If you can be consistent in your message, you'll find that you'll not only reach more people, but more people will see, it would reach their emotions even more. And that's why, massive news stations are so powerful, because they have like 100 articles every single hour. So even though it's a load of rubbish, but it seems like it's important. And I feel a lot of people, even in the spiritual community, they share, but because what they're sharing is so personal, it's so authentic, it's not something that is easy to do, because it takes a lot to do that. So I feel many people in this not just spiritual community, but in the world, who want to help, have to really realize that whatever you say is good enough. I meet time and time again people who say, I want to share a video, but I feel like it's already been said. I say, oh, that's good news. Of course it has. Everything has already been said. I'm not saying anything new at all, because everything is a remix. there's nothing new under the sun. We're creating our own design of it. So when people have that perspective, they'll realize, look, this is all bizarre anyway. You might as well share. You've got nothing to lose. I mean, look at the state of the planet. You're worrying, oh, I wonder if it's good enough. We're not even in that time of milk and honey.
Yep.
Things are happening on the planet pretty fast.
Yep.
This is not the time to be a perfectionist, because before you're twisting and turning, another law could have been passed or something could have happened. So for me, it's like you need a simplicity and a efficiency to create daily if you can. Not just making videos, but through sharing even a picture or whatever it is, but it will definitely make a difference. But on the action side, which you said is so powerful, because really that's where we have to move to next. I say you have to let go of all your attachment to the system in the best way you can.
That's what I say.
It's hard. It's hard when you've got children. A lot of people, they're tied into jobs, but I say I did it. You did it. You can do it. And that's really, I feel, where the real change is going to be.
I agree. This old system's gonna die. It is inevitable.
Yeah, it is. It is, because what's happened is that humanity has been drinking a lot of alcohol. Now they're starting to wake up, not knowing where they've been for this time. The effects are starting to kick in, and they're seeing what they've done. And I feel everything is everyone is after your mind, no matter who it is. Everybody wants attention. How many views did you get? How many likes did you get? We live in an attention orientated world. So we have to realize what you're up against. Not just you want people's attention, I want people's attention. Everybody wants everybody's attention. What does that actually do? It makes people very competitive. It also makes people sometimes move out of their authenticity. So we've been living like that for a long time on the planet, for thousands of years, where you get attention if you get the best grade. So we've got an attention problem on the planet.
Yep.
Where it's who's the most popular, on Instagram, who's got the most followers. So this is the fundamental problem. I was talking to a good friend who makes videos, and we were saying, look, if there was no like button and no view button, all the content on YouTube would be entirely different. Because then, what am I creating for? Nobody, there's no views on it, no likes, then you're just sharing. You've got nothing to lose. So you'll get a more truer creation. But now people create based on people's wants and needs.
Well,
You see, so what's happened is now you have catering, just like the slogan, let's make America great again. That's what we want to hear, you see. But at the same time, is that really what you want? That's another situation.
well, this is exactly, how we were basically talking about the fact that the human race is getting its shadow completely exposed at this point. What you're describing with this whole obsession with perfectionism and whether we're liked and wanting to be liked type of thing is exactly that human shadow of needing acceptance, which happens, of course, in childhood when the subconscious and the conscious get developed. You learn that certain aspects of you are acceptable and certain aspects are not acceptable. So the fact that we're even seeing this shadow in the social media it's like classic. I mean, it's perfect. It's the most obvious reflection of that whole process of socialization that you can possibly get. So of course, socialization is a part of the system. So when the system collapses, we're going to start to recognize all these collective shadows we have by virtue of this process of socialization. So it makes perfect sense.
Yes. What do you feel the solution is? The spiritual catalyst?
To which thing? To this subconscious
Well,
aspect of unacceptance?
to the competitiveness and to the attention dilemma on the
You
planet.
really want
People
me to
will
tell
do
you?
anything to get liked and attention.
I'm going to tell you what I think the solution is, but it's going to surprise people. Because you would expect somebody in my position to come forward and say to somebody, you got to get rid of your competitive nature. You've got to stop caring whether people like you and stop being perfectionistic. But I really feel like you can't get someone to do that. Because you cannot ever shift something you are unwilling to accept. So I feel like the very first step that we have to take is to, number one, recognize and admit to the fact that these shadows are within us. We've got to be able to say, I actually am competitive. And not say it with an attitude of, this is messed up about me, but with an attitude of, let's actually look at the underlying needs that are creating this. Because it's almost like we're cruel to ourselves. Part of this rift between the subconscious and the conscious mind is the fact that we've got this attitude towards ourselves which is so innately self-hating. So I feel like it's no different in the self-help industry. We make an enemy of the ego. We make an enemy of feeling anger. We make an enemy of feeling competitive. You see, we kind of do that. And so we can't change anything because the aspect of us that is basically capable of creating any kind of change would never take that oppositional attitude towards an aspect of itself. So it's almost like we need to get into a space where we're ready to look at these, let's say, shadowy aspects of our being, but with a state of compassion and understanding so that we can actually caretake them. So I would say, don't try to banish your competitive nature. Realize that it's there. Realize why it's there, the painful conditions that created it, and start caretaking it. If you introduce love to the aspect of you that's so terrified of being worthless that it competes, then you get some real change. Not if you try to be not competitive or try to not be angry or all this crap that we've been feeding each other, especially in the spiritual field, for thousands of years. It doesn't work because we need integration. And that's part of why I feel like the racism issues coming up around the world so incredibly extremely right now is because this collective shadow of how disintegrated and fractured we are as a species, it's being mirrored through our racial issue. If we're looking at somebody else and we're saying, I don't want this person or this being or this thing to be a part of me, we are not in a state of integration and wholeness. We are in a state of fracture. So it's better that we recognize that this is actually what's going on within us so that we can address what's preventing us from creating that integration. But I can tell you that not wanting to have anger within you is not very much different than saying, I don't want Mexicans in my country. So,
Right.
so it's people love to make a difference there, but there is no difference. So it's really about integration. It's about how do we pull in closer to us these aspects of us that we have the resistance to, because they were not set up by virtue of joy. They were set up by virtue of pain. People are not born fragmented. They become fragmented when they experience the trauma of losing love as a result of being a certain way or exhibiting a certain behavior. So I would love to undo that process.
Do you feel that even moving along, I talk of becoming your greatest version, people talk of the spiritual journey. Do you feel that's a lot harder to reach for most people? People aren't born that way. You feel you have to almost it's like climbing a mountain. It takes a lot of training,
Yeah,
which most people tap out of in the first
most people
few
tap out of in
days.
the first few days, but I feel like some people should tap out. And this is
Right.
literally, this is kind of where I'm going now with a lot of what I'm teaching about, is that I feel like there's a hell of a lot of us that are on this path, the spiritual path, and it's a self-hating path. It's like I almost want to go into their houses, steal every single self-help book they possess, take away every spiritual practice because they're just doing it to try to be a different way than how they are. So it's almost like even that commitment to becoming your highest version of self is like to say that there's an aspect of you that isn't. So I feel like right now we're in a time where we're being called to recognize that these lower aspects of self are in fact disguised versions of our higher selves. That's what we didn't know, for thousands of years and now know. The higher self is disguised as the inner child. You will be able to integrate with the higher self to the degree that you're able to integrate with your inner child. There is no difference there. And
Right.
but I don't notice that happening often with the people who are on the path to the highest version of self. They keep trying to, like cutting ropes off themselves. They keep trying to cut free from the aspects of them they don't want to be. I don't want to be jealous. I'm going to cut it off and keep climbing towards my higher self. But all of the beauty and enlightenment is about them going back to that aspect of self.
I agree, and that's so beautiful how you put it, because I feel once again, there's always, well, you see it in the slogans. Everyone is trying to strive for something better, which is fantastic. But at the same time, you can also, we're trying to hide something. Always, in every single action, even myself, we always do it. And it's something which I feel is because so many of us are really not liking the state we're in. And we're really trying to put out all hands and trying to climb for something at any cost. But it's always going to be there. And that's what I've accepted to say, okay, that's why my whole thing was to say, okay, I don't want to share like as if I know anything better than you. So I always have to keep saying this is what's helped me along my journey. Because if I say, oh, this is what to do, people will blame me. you know,
Oh,
this
I
is
know
just
that.
my experience,
I get
you
it all
know.
the time. Yeah.
Right, right. And I feel you're so brave because I know you've encountered a lot of people who have judged your work and people who love your work, and you're still there shining. And that's what I always say, like how you handle it is so well because you also at, should I focus on it or should I let it slide? You see, should I defend myself or should I just keep going? So what you've been doing for so long is fantastic because it really shows the dedication and the commitment, regardless of what anyone says. And it's not easy to do because the moment you start telling people or helping people, people think you're perfect. And they think that, wait a minute, they'll try and pick you apart and they'll try and, like, if you teach something, they'll hold you against it, they'll test you, and that's why you have all of these stories where people who don't help people are always more praised than the people who do, you know by the masses sometimes. Don't teach me anything, I'll love you. Teach me something, then I'll find out something about you, then hold it against you. So I feel even that it's like humanity has to evolve even on that level to realize that people who are sharing are only sharing from the kindness of their heart. And you better be grateful because people, I feel that's another thing missing as well. People aren't grateful enough. You see it in even the attention it gets. You see, if you were to do a prank or if you were to do this, do that, you might go viral.
Mm-hmm.
So people these days growing up as a young child, you're not thinking about what is right. You're thinking about what's popular. So people these days, so many people are always thinking, okay, how can I grab the attention? And people who are just sharing regardless, we are the pioneers. Like you're a pioneer, I'm a pioneer because we flipped the script. We're making this stuff popular. At the same time, we started off just being ourselves, so it's a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Very easy. You see, it's very easy because we created a blueprint. But I feel now a lot of people find themselves not really knowing where to start because there's so much out there. The only way to be heard right now, like, is to really just be yourself. But even then, people might say, well, no one is seeing me because it's very difficult to even get looked at unless, you're coming from a totally different angle. There's only so much you can talk about law of attraction. There's only so much you can talk about this. And that's why I always tell people the next step is the artwork, where you literally are going to be creating worlds.
Yep.
You're not even going to, like, I say in the next 10 years or even 5 years, like, people won't even talk about law of attraction. They won't even talk about all of these spiritual concepts we're talking about now because it will be a whole new wave of inner discovery. That's how I see it because things are just, people are saying the same thing and now everyone wants to say the same thing, so you're going to have even more uniqueness because people are like, okay, I can't say what they've just said because it's too similar. So people right now are trying to find even more ways they can be themselves, but do something totally different, and that's amazing.
It is.
And how do you feel just being on your journey? I know you travel so much. What do you see? Where do you see the biggest awakening happening of all the places you've gone to or so far?
Europe.
Okay.
I feel like especially Germany, ironically. Now it's not a surprise. I mean, I was thinking about this and kind of surprised until I realized that we're about to repeat the 1930s in the world.
Right.
And so it's not a surprise that Germany is the place that's waking up at this particular juncture in time. But yeah, I cannot tell you the amount of interest we've been getting there. It is like they're eating it up and waking up at a rate which is astronomical. So that's where I think is the place that is waking up the fastest.
Right, right. And what do you feel about, there are so many different ways to dive deep. And I feel a lot of 2012, it was really fusing the artwork of even conspiracies and all of these things. I think that's what captures people's emotions even more. And I feel a lot of people who were sharing it kind of, they got so much attention that it was overwhelming. Because I remember in those early days, those 2012 days where people were just not even afraid to dive deep. I think now people are a bit more reserved than they were, you know, because even I remember myself, I was even diving into areas where now it's like, gosh, it seems like people are even more reserved right now.
Really?
I mean, in terms of, the topics, the areas, because everybody is so politically correct. And I feel there's so many different levels to this that you want to stay grounded on planet Earth, then you got another voice saying, "What is planet Earth?" you know? So at the same time you want to be out in space and then you're like, "Wait a minute, I got real stuff going on." So how do you balance the two? Because I know sometimes you're giving some really practical advice and then you're probably thinking of like astral traveling and you're like, "Oh, that's so cool." Or kind of, really wanting to go out there to say, what the hell are you talking about, Teal? And then you're like, oh, I got to keep it practical. Do you ever feel like a kind of resistance into sometimes when you talk?
To my own information or what? No, no. I don't feel any resistance to what I create. But what bothers me is when I go look at, like you were talking about earlier, I go look and I find out that people care more about abstract concepts than they do about stuff that's actually going to change their life here and now. So, I mean, the esoteric and metaphysical stuff is what gets the most viewership, and that upsets me. In a world where we're living in the emotional dark age, I feel like what humanity needs is not what humanity is interested in, and that is when I start to feel the irritation and the resistance.
Right, right. Well, I agree, and I feel it's like water and Coca-Cola or something. Everyone knows water is good for you, but it's boring. It's too simple. It's too pure. It's too good. So people don't gravitate towards that growing up. Most people want soda, which is the worst for you. But it seems like it's got everything in it. It's a great show. It's a great story. And I feel that's where we are on the planet. People, they go for what looks good. People want to show. People, their lives are so miserable. They need escapism. They
That's the
don't need to
thing.
be reminded of it.
Yeah, so it's
you
like just
know?
teach me how to levitate. Don't teach me how to make healthy relationships.
Right, right, right.
And
Yeah,
so
because I even noticed that along my journey that people don't want the plain day to day stuff,
no,
because it's just too simple. But at the same time, it's the most helpful for them. But they look at it like if you talk about something, how to levitate or whatever, oh, cool. What's this about? It's an immediate distraction from their current reality, which
Exactly.
is fantastic for them. They think because it can kind of get them away from themselves a bit. And I feel that's not easy to do because when you're creating, you want people to listen, but you know that most people are drawn to sensationalism. They're drawn to the really to the great shows and the great stories. That's why people go to the films, the cinema. People want to see a story. If you're just telling me how to be in a healthy relationship, it's almost like potato chips with no salt. Not many people are going to be willing to eat that. But if you put some flavoring on it, I might consider it. you know, so I feel the whole key for people who are really assisting people is to also realize that you can also fuse both worlds together. It's what I call left hand, right hand, and I feel that's really the wizard's uh, secrets, that you're always fusing both worlds together. So you can really connect with someone, not for you but for them. You know how to reach them at their level, and then you can show them your world. But a lot of the times people, they forget where everyone else is, and sometimes that's why most people they just disappear. They never get to see you because you don't reach them on their level. And that's why when I create, I'm always experimenting. Sometimes I do a 3 minute video, 1 minute video. Recently I've been doing a lot of 11 minute videos, and I'm like, okay, that's a great time to do it. you know but I'm always reaching because I'm like, okay, I love long videos. But then I'm thinking, in a world which is so fast paced, you have to always experiment, say, okay, how can I capture? I'm talking to a good friend and he's like, he's all about attention. And I'm like, wow, that's so powerful. He just wants to capture your attention. He wants everyone to see what he's creating. And he does such short videos, straight to the point. And that's totally opposite from me. But what I took from that was that's fantastic because it's really tapping into the emotion quickly in such a fast paced world. And I say when you can fuse both together, you know, then really it's the ultimate form of mastery. And I look at someone like yourself who is really a master in fantastic in so many ways, so versatile. Like you're laughing really because you can come from so many different angles, and I feel that's what it's gonna take. Even me, I don't even come from all the angles. I skate. I've been skating my whole life. I play the guitar. Yeah, I don't even show that stuff. But I'm like, what if I did? I could even reach a whole nother kind of audience. But once again, it's like, do you want to do that? Do you want to show the whole world everything? Then it goes back to like, you're going to be like a Jesus or a Buddha. These are people, who gave everything, and literally, when you give everything, you may not get anything back.
Yeah, that's why the giving itself has to be in alignment. But that's how it sort of feels like. Like, some of us are more exhibitionists than others. I honestly feel like there's an aspect of me that's kind of an exhibitionist. I feel like there are times where just the complete exposure is the most incredible relief from pressure. But it leaves people in a state of complexity. You have to comprehend gray areas to comprehend that. Somebody who's multifaceted. But we all are, whether we admit it or not.
I agree. I agree. I feel you have to show some craziness whenever you create. And I feel with everything that's happening on the planet, people who have it in them to share definitely have to congratulate themselves because I don't even think like they know how much they're doing because You don't have to do that at all. We weren't born to say, okay, we have to uplift humanity. That's not even natural. And I always have myself thinking, who is right here? The people who just don't care about helping anyone, or the people who do? You see what I'm trying to say? Like, maybe then, it's like we have to really see the greatness of our design, and this sharing that you do is a gift. And that's why people have to really fuse together and unify even more. There's a reason why people, especially in the spiritual community or just people at large, what keeps people apart is separation. And what people don't get, when things will change, the Rubik's Cube will come into alignment, is when everyone connects. But what's keeping people apart is that people are still trying to maintain appearances.
Yep.
And also, people are still in competitive mode because everybody wants to be the top one. And that's not just, that's every aspect of life. Everybody wants to be number one, not number two, number one. So I was telling this person, look, don't worry about it. There's someone with 88 million Instagram followers, you know, and they're probably not even happy because someone's got 89. So they're even in competition with that person. Mm-hmm. You see, so it's all relative to where you are, and I feel when people really realize that that's the only way, but that's the hardest way, because when you come together, you literally have to stop playing that kind of game, which means the fun is over. But actually, it's just begun, actually. But for a lot of people, we've associated the fun with the competition, with I want to be number one. But actually, that's our misery.
Yeah, but so here's my advice. You ready?
Okay.
I actually think that competitive, how we were talking about earlier, that we need to actually caretake the aspect of us as competitive. So I feel like at this particular point in time, connection is the most critical thing that we can do, besides getting outside of our own personal rat cage. We have to get connected with each other, because it's the disintegration which is causing these kinds of conflicts. So basically, let's just take you and me, right? How do you and I connect right now in this moment? By admitting to you that I am competitive when it comes to this business and I want to be the best. Admitting it to you flat out and putting it in between us means that it's no longer this subconscious aspect that is kind of ruling from the background. And it means that in this relationship, you and I can both acknowledge the reality of this aspect of self that has that desire, right? And we can both, in the relationship, caretake that aspect of me and whatever else you put into the center of the table. But you and I can't have an authentic relationship until I tell you that that is a reality of me, right? It's a reality of mine that I do want to be number one. When I put that into the middle, you and I have an opportunity to connect on a genuine level, instead of on a, let's say, level of pretense, where we're playing the spiritual teachers who say, oh, you're right, those people who want to be number one. Those people,
Right. Well, that's how I saw it. When I was lying on the grass in my garden when I first heard your voice years ago, and I'm like, oh, I know her. I just know her. When I started to see your videos, I'm like, that's amazing. Then I realized, oh my gosh, our content was so similar, because people were writing to me saying, oh, they've seen your videos, and they've seen mine, always in the same sentence. So I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, we need to talk, and the more we were talking, I'm like, that's amazing. And for me, it was a healthy competition. I was like, this is great. Then I realized in the end, it's more of the same audience. Then I realized on another level, when we grow, we both grow together. But then I realized another thing, that why not work together?
Well, that's exactly what we're doing, but that's the connection.
That's the connection. That's what I was thinking before we did. I'm like, why not? Because I was like, this is the perfect balance. Then I realized your style was totally different from mine. I could relax. And I feel that's why you have to get into the artwork, because two artists know they can always get along just great because their art is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we're going to the art show. No two artists, no two great artists would ever be in competition. It wouldn't make sense because they are both doing it for totally different reasons. And we have to always remember we are artists. And then you realize, okay, art is there for whoever wants to see it, whoever it helps. But an artist doesn't say, okay, 1,000 people have seen my art, therefore it's better than someone's art who nobody's seen. You know, there's a lot of people in Venice who make art and they don't even put their name on it.
Yes.
You, you know, so when I came across, that, I'm like, wow, there's Banksy, there's all these people who just create art. You don't even know who it's them. So I just started to see it's amazing what you're doing. And then, I support you 100% because I know what it takes, and I know it's not easy at all because we're there, we're in the camera, and people, oh, but only till you do it do you really know what it takes. And I feel there has to even be more connection, because the more connectivity you have, the more flow comes, you see. And what's happened is, we kind of stop and start, which is fine. But if you really want to create the snowball effect, it has to be even more, because, and people have to see it. And I'm so proud we've done, you know, throughout the years, just share and share, because people want to see it. People are wondering, okay, are you two cool together, or do you hate each other's guts? Not us, but I'm just saying, people who share. Maybe
Yeah.
you've got other spiritual peers or people in Hay House that you're cool with. People want to know, like, are you cool with them? And then when people see you are, they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. People get inspired when they see two people sharing together. And then it's like, okay, it just happens more and more. But that's the greatest secret that people have to get out of their massive ego. I feel the problem with, a lot of spirituality is that people want to claim ownership when that can be an ego trap. Like I can make a video and have, I did a video how to stop absorbing other people's energy, and then, you know a year later I saw some guy post an article about it with his name on it, with all my work on it, and I was looking at it like, oh my gosh, I'm really angry. Then I said, wait a minute, I get the game. He can do that. I'm not going to say I own this stuff, you see? And I feel that's what's really holding so many of us back, because we say, okay, this is it. This is my works. And I feel everybody says that in all areas of their life, which is the greatest trap, because you can say exactly what I say in my video. It's yours. Take it. I don't mind. But you won't take my energy. I feel that's the next level of evolution, where, hey, say it. Doesn't make a difference. And I always say it always shines through anyway. But, a lot of people, they're afraid to lose stuff. And they want their material exclusive. And that doesn't even exist in the universe. Everything is copied and translated time and time again. People, be saying things that you've said in your video, in their video,
Yeah.
We all do it, You've read a book, you say a line from it, and it's beautiful. It's just that we have to realize that it's natural and that everything is being recycled, and there's nothing wrong with it. And then when you realize that, then you're like, okay, well, I've got nothing to lose. But I definitely feel that we have to be proud of ourselves, because we've been doing it for a long time, at a time when it wasn't even popular. When there was no one sharing on YouTube about any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel if you realize what you did, you and I and people like Spirit Science and all of these people, They pave the way. And that's what happens. Like I was saying to a friend, that what people do now, you're going to see someone who's going to have 5 million subscribers based off your information. Going to come probably in the next few months. Same as me, of my information. They're going to be 10 million subscribers in just 6 months in, because that's how it works. It's like you might have read a book from a really great, spiritual teacher, and, they helped give you a hack which took you to the next level. So, life is amazing because we're making it easier for everyone based on what we do. So, people can look at our work and say, actually, I can use a bit of that, use a bit of this. So their process is even more smoother. But at the same time, it always goes back to the foundation of what it's built on. And when you are an architect, you start smiling because you realize what you've done. You've created a whole wave of tealers out there. How do you feel? Which is amazing because you're literally changing so many people's lives in amazing ways, and that's the best thing in the world. Over time, and that's goes back to the presence is so powerful. We don't even give ourselves enough credit because when you help someone, people take it for granted. And when you don't, then they say, "Oh, thanks so much." So it's like we have to always remind ourselves that we've done a lot. Really, we've really set the ball rolling. We don't even have to do anything more, but to support the next generation. I mean, that's what I'm doing, because I'm like, okay, I'm seeing how things are moving. I don't know how spiritual catalyst is, but with Infinite Waters, it's more like it's not even about me anymore. It's about the deep divers there. They're creating their own infinite waters because it's a whole principle. Same as Teal Tribe and all of these things, people are creating worlds within that. Mm-hmm. So you're almost creating like an artwork, and other people are drawing their own artwork in it.
Oh yeah, totally.
And that's amazing. And what do you feel? Because there's so many women I see, especially on Instagram, do you feel America was ready for a woman president?
No.
Because a lot of people saying, a lot of women weren't voting for Hillary and all of this, and they didn't want to see her in.
No, I don't think that we were ready for a female president. No. I think that our shadow is still, let's say, got too much momentum behind it. But I also don't think that she was really a representation of a female. And I'm going to just be super honest and not be super politically correct and just tell it to you straight. To be doing what Hillary Clinton is doing, with the current way that campaigns have to be run, which is insane. It literally makes boot camp look like nothing. The kind of people who can stand up and take that, most of them have personality disorders. There's a reason why so many politicians are sociopathic or narcissistic. It is because of the fact that the nature of that very career demands that you are. The average person could not deal with the amount of opposition that they get. The average person couldn't deal with all the death threats or the schedule that these politicians have to take. Or, their campaigning in general is corrupt. So basically, speaking as a woman, when I look at her, I'm not looking at a woman. So it was not like we got to make the decision between divine feminine and masculine nightmare. It was more of the same, more pretense, definitely not a female. A genuine, let's say, squarely in her divine feminine essence, would never, in her life, support the kind of things that Hillary Clinton supports. So, basically, it was not that easy choice. We had a choice. The Americans had a choice between more of the same that we hate or something radically different at all costs, no matter what that cost is. So, it sucked.
Right. Right. And right now there are so many women, I see them on Instagram, who are sharing a lot of amazing information, but I haven't seen their face anywhere. And a lot of women also caught up in the beauty of the body, which is amazing. Do you feel the crossover? What do you feel is the hack to the crossover of really, you know, using the throat chakra even more and fusing the beauty with it?
For women specifically?
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like the women who are doing the best with this crossover period are the ones that are being authentic. The ones who are like, look, I woke up and I look at my cellulite. It's those types of women that I feel like are doing the most for this collective awakening. But it takes a lot to go out and be honest about what your life is really like as a woman instead of try to be perfect. 'Cause like, when you're in a position like any of us are, who are women who are in positions of leadership or notoriety, the amount of pressure that gets put on you is absolutely crazy. And so like, and we're supposed to be in a state of perfection, and so I feel like sharing the fact that we're not in a state of perfection is both the most scary and most powerful thing that we can do, but it's so divine feminine. Like, it's completely divine feminine. We're naturally receptive as a energy. Feminine energy is a receptive energy, and it's a loving energy, and it's not that striving energy that you see with divine masculine. So I feel like if we're being true to ourselves in that way and sharing our own authenticity, we let other women off of the hook for trying to be exactly how they feel like they need to be, and trying to be men also, which is something that women have been trying to do for years, and nobody's going to like me saying that, but it's the actual truth. Most of the 1960s movement was nothing but women wanting to be men, not women wanting to be women. So what I'm hoping to see is this new evolution is women who really want to be women, and bring back those gifts that naturally come with the divine feminine. But it's difficult.
Right.
I mean, it's so difficult. I can't explain how difficult it is. I mean, I just got off of European tour. European tour is, I am doing a different, performance, basically, sometimes twice a day, every weekend. And it's crazy, and I'm away from my son, right? So even I, in that kind of a position, success in this world for what I'm doing is within the context of what masculine success would look like, and even I kind of feel my own femininity start to shrivel up when I'm on those tours, because I'm doing the provider thing, I'm doing the aggressive thing, I'm the one that's standing up on stage when I've got massive opposition and getting in this kind of war zone, and I'm the one who left my son at home, with the rest of the community so I could go do that. So there's a lot of those aspects that just do not feel natural to divine feminine. So it's a constant, let's say it's like a constant struggle to try to maintain connection with what's feminine about me in a world that is designed for men, to be honest. And I feel like the new society that we're about to develop, it's not about women taking over because women are better. It's about us finding a balance between divine masculine and divine feminine, because it's not healthy to live in an entirely masculine society, even for men. And it's not healthy to live in an entirely feminine society, even for women. So it's about basically creating what that would look like. But I can tell you that the world that we've got right now is not conducive to what it means to be a woman. And it's part of why we're seeing reproductive cycles get so incredibly destroyed. I mean, women are unhealthy. Talk to any infertility specialist and they'll tell you it's crazy. Like the numbers that you had way back when, you wouldn't see this level of dysfunction with the reproductive cycle, and now you're seeing massive dysfunction, and part of it is because of this imbalance.
Right. I definitely realize that when the masculine and feminine comes into harmony within each of us, things will change, and it's just a case of a lot of people knowing what part to play and not trying to play someone else's role, because that really will bite you in the butthole.
Yeah, it will.
Because, and it's the same thing, it goes back to competition, and it goes back to swimming in someone else's lane. And I feel it's a thing where, I think this whole recent election and everything, it's survival, which has been the program has been rebooted. Survive,
Yep.
and I feel it's almost sometimes might push people further into survival mode, but give people also a chance to say, okay, I've got to stop doing that,
Yep.
because this is really what will be the outcome of it. It leads to total disaster, and I feel the perfect balance is that people have to find. See, everybody's looking for the attainment, which is the never-ending ladder, and you only realize this the more you get up the ladder, that there's even someone higher than you. It seems, you could have $1 million and meet someone who's got 50. Your small change, they won't even look at you twice. So you realize even in that field, and that's why it's like you have to really understand the nature of the game we're all playing. It's a mind game of numbers, you know, and sometimes I feel that in itself is something which is not easy to undo, because numbers are tied into our reality. And I feel the only way around it is to really realize that, join forces with people who you are competitive with, and start kicking butt, because otherwise you'll always be caught up in the illusion. The more you do that, then you'll realize when you separate, you create stories, and stories is what people are running on right now, which lead to disillusionment.
So what
And
would
I
you
feel, yeah,
what would you tell people in the world then if they were terrified of the future right now?
I would tell people that first of all, it's okay to be terrified, because
That's what I would say. I love you. We always have the
yeah,
same
yeah.
thing.
I would say it's okay to be terrified, because I feel the problem is that we're always trying to put a band-aid on. We're trying to sugarcoat stuff to make things like they're okay, and
Yep.
they're actually not.
They're not
Things are
okay.
terrible.
Yep.
Things are terrible, but if I say things are terrible, that's very negative of me to say that. And I feel they are absolutely disgraceful on the planet. We're living in utter, in absolute horror. And if I say that, it comes across negative, but I always tell people that, it's okay to be afraid of the future, because humanity's ego is huge, and it's something which it's not just an easy solution to it. Humanity's ego is the reinforcement daily. It's like a muscle being built every single second, which means it's getting stronger, and it's going to take the same amount of time for it to be reduced. So we have to realize we're not dealing with a static ego. We're dealing with the ego which is like getting bigger every single second.
Yep.
So I would say it's okay to be afraid. But at the same time, realize that you are part of that ego, and if you've changed a tiny bit. Doesn't mean the whole world is going to change, though, because it's on each and every person. It's up to them. And most people are simply not tuned in to themselves first and foremost, because people are up against nature, which is reproducing. So we also have nature at our backside as well. Say, make more babies. So the more babies you make, you don't have time to start going on the journey within. You got to look after someone else, which is fantastic. But now people become incredibly busy, and the misery of our lives is the busyness of our
Yep.
lives. You see, and the more we go within, the more simplicity you create, the more peace and happiness comes. I wake up a lot of the days and I have a lot of time. That's a great thing, because I made sure that I want to get paid just for breathing in prana, and that's what happened. You see, that's what happened. I said I just want to get paid just for saying peace, and that's what happened. Now I wake up every day with a bunch of grapes in my mouth and and realizing this is literally like a magical universe, because a lot of people, and that's why people were like, gosh, Ralph, you should go on tour. You should. I did a small talk in the OC. That's the only one I've ever did. And people are like, why don't you do a whole tour? You'll make millions. And I'm like, for me, it's never been a big need because, I mean, when the time is right, but life is great. I've never been one to rush around.
Really?
I'd much rather be in the forest.
That
You
doesn't
know,
surprise any of us.
you see? So for me, I'm looking at it like that. I feel that it's like people who do everything, I always say, get nothing. People who do nothing get everything. And it's like, I give you an example. Let's say you've lost your keys and you're spending 5 hours to look for it while someone is just lying on the grass, and that's how life is. Most people are still looking for their car keys and they find it and they think they've done something. You see, not realizing they've wasted a whole load of energy. So time is relative to what you're going through.
Yes.
You see, and a lot of us, we spend a whole load of time thinking we're doing something. In actuality, we're just consumed with a load of nonsense, thinking we've done something. Because doing something simple would think like we're not doing anything when really that's the secret. So it's like a massive mind game of really finding um, your own zen. And like what you said in a great video, taking the bits of different philosophies and everything, infusing it into your own. I just think that what's happened is that until you've made it, there's a great story of a great skater who was saying that he won all of these awards, and when he got all of them, they didn't even matter anymore. He's like, this doesn't even matter. And then I told that to a friend, and he's like, of course he would say that. He's already got them. It's easy to say it once you've got it. And I feel that's the secret catch. Everyone has to get to that top of the mountain to realize actually it's no different from being at the top or the bottom. Sometimes even at the top is even worse. Because, you know, it's like, look at these celebrities, you realize, like, do you really want to have paparazzi, following you around? You think that's what you want until you realize, like, I don't envy them, because it's another trap of really realizing that, hey, it's not much different. You've got all of this stuff, but you can't even go out by yourself. You need someone to walk around with you. So it's like, what fun is that? You got no privacy anymore. So I feel, it's just amazing where the world is heading, because I feel a lot of people are going to be in for a rude awakening.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what needs to happen for great change.
That's what's in the cards for us. So.
But you're so amazing. And what do you want to leave us with? Because what one message would you say is the most one a message people need to hear right now on the planet?
The one message
More.
people need to hear about the planet and themselves within the planet right now at this particular time is that the universe is about to take away absolutely every single one of the things that is preventing you from your own desires and your own expansion. But what that means is, if you have been desiring, let's say, to be free of a job, the universe takes your job away if you don't get rid of that job. So I feel like what people need to hear more than anything else is get out of your damn rat cage, figure out what that rat cage is, but get out of it as fast as you possibly can. Because literally, when this system collapses, any of those ties you still have, that is going to be the point of suffering. I would love to see people not have to wake up through that kind of suffering. But the people who are not going to have to wake up through that kind of suffering are the ones who are going to take this move in their lives in the direction of what they genuinely want to create before the universe gives them an excuse to have to.
Oh, well, that's powerful words from this Spiritual catalyst. Yeah, I mean it's amazing because I just feel the one message I would give to people is that really hear hear things more. Hear. I think if everyone had a better hearing, things would have probably gone differently. Many people don't hear even when politicians speak. They only because there's noise in the background. They got everything on, music on here, and when you actually listen to even people's voices, you can actually hear their energy through it. And I think that's what's happened to humanity. We were never paying any attention in the first place.
Yep.
So we were easy, we were so easy to be fooled,
Yes.
And that's why when you had all of these subliminals coming up in advertisements, it's like we could probably have spotted them if we were paying attention, because like The Simpsons had Donald Trump and all of these things. Like, it's like you just start to observe more things when you're paying attention. But it's just that so many of us have become preoccupied with a load of garbage. And I think, thank goodness, people are starting to pay attention when the fire is burning right now. Oh my gosh, it's so hot. But that's the only time people pay attention, when they've got fire up their backside. So it's almost like there's no choice but to pay attention, because it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And I think it's showing people that maybe that was our problem in the first place. Like, we weren't paying attention. And I feel maybe that's a secret.
I agree completely.
You see, and really, I just thank you so much for all you do, and keep creating. What would you say is, you're always so sharing so much of yourself, but what would you say is your own shadow you're working on currently, right now?
The shadow that I'm working on is actually my relationship to the self, because my haters, let's say these hate groups that have formed around me, are so incredibly pervasive that I have had to realize that there's an aspect in me that thinks that they're right about me. And that is something that really surprised me, because I spent the first half of my career pushing against them and not realizing that the shadow of my career is trying to be a good person. When I am who I am in the world, I get to believe I'm good, which means there's an aspect of me that thinks I'm not. And I keep seeing it reflected through them over and over and over. And it wouldn't hurt me so bad if I didn't feel like maybe they're right about me. So what I'm working on is that aspect of me that feels like they're right, which is an aspect from my wounded childhood, by virtue of being told that I was exactly what my haters say about me now. And I wasn't over that wound, and I didn't ever develop a strong sense of self separate from that projection when I was young. So it's not a surprise why it's coming up right now, and it is one of the most difficult things I've ever had to work through. But that's what my focus is.
Right. Right. Well, I support you in all you do, and I've had it. I had it from when I used to make videos. People made so many videos, and how I always dealt with it was just to say, hey, it takes a lot of time to create on someone else. In that time, I could create something myself, because there's always a link and a correlation. People who are really going places, you would never see them critiquing a lot of people.
Yeah.
People critique sometimes to create attention for
Oh,
themselves.
trust me, I've got enough of that going on. Oh my gosh. People are
You
literally
see,
creating their entire careers off of just getting attention by going against me. It's really fun.
right, right. You see, and I feel sometimes when you don't give them the food they want, it's even more powerful, because they're just waiting for you just to say something back. Perfect. Now they can, when you don't, it kind of, they start to realize, oh my gosh, because that will fade away very quickly. Now, what are they going to talk about? And then it almost, they expose themselves that this is what you're bringing to the table, because anybody that talks about someone continuously obviously has a problem with themselves, and also isn't creating anything apart from talking about someone else. So what else are they doing? And I feel you always see it. It's just part of the game, that when you don't have anything to create, might as well talk about someone else. It's a good start. you know,
Yeah.
and a bad start actually, you know. But it's like that's what happens, and as well, I feel many times it shows your power. People are only concerned when you're going places.
Yep.
I say even on YouTube to get past 100,000 subscribers, it's a big deal when you're talking about this kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you're still going to have a lot of people going against you, even on 10,000 subscribers.
Oh yeah.
And as the more you grow, you'll always have people who will love you and people who won't. And that's so natural because once again, it's just a testimony to your light and the amount you shine.
So what are you?
But
What is your upcoming stuff? Do you have any like? Are you doing any upcoming talks, or is it just more of the videos? What would you?
well, for me, there's possible always in the works. I'm always open to talking. You know, I love doing it in live person, and it could be Hawaii soon. But
I can see you
really,
there. Your whole attitude towards time would fit in Hawaii really well.
yeah. You know, for me, like I say, I'm just creating and really realizing, like, gosh, a video is a video.
Yeah.
That's a lot because when you record a video, you have to edit it, you have to upload it. It's even more powerful than a picture because it's you in moving form.
Yes.
So I'm saying, oh my gosh, that's enough, and I'm seeing the fruits of my labor. That, like I say, infinite waters. It's not even about me. It's more of a symbol, and that's why people connect to it because everything is built on the logos, on the logo, on the symbol, on what it represents. It's not really about the person. So for me, I'm just always about infinite waters, diving deep and enjoying the show.
I'm bummed you're not in California. You know I'm going to be down there next month, right? I have a San Diego
Right.
workshop coming up in December.
Wow, that's
I
amazing.
want you to be down there so I can see you again.
Yeah, well, I'm actually looking at flights. I want to travel soon, so you know I may see you there. You know, and it will be amazing. Really, I just feel it's just powerful to connect because once again, that's what people need to see more of.
Hmm.
And the great thing they've been seeing it, but it's just that people don't see it enough. And when people do, they almost, oh my gosh, you know. And it's amazing because when I shared the video, even on my Instagram, you know, people, oh my gosh, you know, they're seeing things, and a whole wave of people went to your channel, you know, and saying, oh my gosh, she's amazing, she's helped me so much. And I'm like, that's phenomenal. It's really seeing what happens through the connection. And yeah, I'm just proud of you and really realize that, you know, people will talk and people will always talk when you're great. You have to realize that, you know, whenever you're doing something, because whenever I watch your videos, I'm like, gosh, how can she just say everything, which is just so amazing, you know? And I think that's why it's hard when you are saying stuff so consistently, which you really is so authentic and so on the science and so in alignment. People will do whatever they can to almost talk about something just to throw you off your edge. People are always really not even attacking your information, they're trying to attack your own energy.
Again, nobody attacks my
S-
information. I wish they would. It'd be a really good argument, but like, it's never about me.
Right. That's the thing, and it's like that's why it's like a lot of these people, I always say, you know, they're small flies, you know, and we're the sugar, you know, and it's like that's just part of the nature of it. You know, we attract these people because it's like moths coming to light, and certain times I realize that many people who are, if you actually were to meet the people who were saying things about you, you would actually find they actually love you so much to the point where they actually think you're taking their space up. That's what I'm saying about competition, because if you've got two spiritual leaders or people who are teaching, one is teaching and then one sees another one, and then they're going to compare likes and views and oh my gosh. So it almost, the ego can even creep into that person.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes people are like, I was this one, and sometimes it only gets resolved when people realize their foolishness, their pettiness, which is very tough because they've almost can't admit it because they think that's silly, but it is silly. That's the whole thing. Very silly. But, people, once again, it's a sign. I always say it's a sign, you're falling off. If the day I start talking about anybody, trust me, that's the day Infinite Waters is ended, because it means like I'm losing out. I'm bitter. Nothing is happening for me. I'm like an old man, like, crying away. You don't do that if you're thriving.
Well, so that
No
right
time
there,
for that.
that right there is where I feel like we should leave off on this video, because the reality is that this type of an election that we've seen and these things in the world are a symptom of something deeper. So, like you're saying, anybody who basically spends their life against something else is unwilling to look within themselves at those, let's say, insecurities and those shadows that are fueling that kind of obsessive focus. And so, what we need to do basically right now, and this is what the awakening is about, is looking within us for why these conditions are manifesting externally instead of yelling at the external manifestation of them.
Well, I'm so grateful for you diving deep, and so much love along your journey.
You too.
And you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.